Hello. Welcome back to the MILPA Show, where we disseminate news on culture, consciousness, and movement building. My name is Keylin Esperanza Figueroa Jimenez. And thank you so much for being here, just tuning in, whether it's on YouTube or the audio version. We appreciate you. We welcome you into our space. Sending good vibes. Hope you feel the good vibes today también. Today's little episode and conversation, we're gonna talk about school, health, and safety, segue into reclaiming that indigeneity and what it means to you. If y'all didn't see the first episode of it, we're going to drop that link in the description below, so y'all can check that first part out. Bernie, Rosaura, and Desiree were able to have a really cool conversation of what it means to them, and we're going to be able to see that evolution, that just about what they've been going through the past couple months, what they've grown, what they've seen, any changes. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with the song of the day. Since I am talking right now, I'll go ahead and go first. So my song of the day, it's a good day to fight the system by, I'm really bad with their name, but I'll go ahead and put it right here, so y'all can check it out. It's a really good song. Honestly, like if you wake up, just play it and you'll just get into the mood, be like, yeah, like today is a good day to fight the system. Pero con eso, I'll go ahead and pass the palabra over to Rosaura.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Hopefully you're doing well. We are here recording on a Friday, so getting our energy up, moving forward. And I would say for myself, my song of the day would have to be, I don't know who sings it, but I listened to this song a lot, like in movies growing up, and like my family would sing it, and it would just be like one of those songs. But that song, the Sledge Sisters, we are family. I got all my sisters with me. So, that little song always reminds me of like my family from Bakersfield. We grew up like with them and watching movies, and anytime like we were out together, like randomly freaking bust out in songs. So we're really big on like movie references. So that would be like one of those, it's not a movie reference, but it would be in movies. So like it would remind me of just that type of energy. So yeah, I'll pass it on to you, Bernie.
No, gracias y'all for sharing, so que hubo gente, Bernie Gomez in the house, you know what I'm saying? Aquí estamos with my two folks right here. I think sound of the day is gonna be, just because I was listening on the way up, I was out, right, and on the way up here where I was to the pad, I was listening to The Message, by Grandmaster Flash, taking it back to some old school rap and stuff, so it really is, I like that. I grew up to that music, so so that's my song of the day.
Yeah, so with that, we're going to go ahead and start the plática, just like what's been going on in our communities, that school, health, and just safety that's been going around. There's been a couple of different things that's been happening in the Santa Cruz area, Monterey County, and just in general with everyone, that in our personal communities también. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Bernie, just to go ahead and give a little bit of a like preview to the Aptos High School and all of that.
Yeah, no, most definitely right. But I really want to start by first acknowledging, the life of that young man that was taken right too early. Extending condolences to the familia. It's always a tragedy when we continue to experience, our youth lateral violence, right? And it's something that's, it's sad that has been going on for decades, and it hasn't, the resources, right, haven't been there to try to stop that or curb that, right? But yeah, so I think a little backdrop, I think everybody, y'all, if folks are, watch the news or read the papers or social media, right? There was a pelea, at Aptos High School, PVUSD, up in Santa Cruz County, right? And it got real. There was se murió el muchacho, right? And and we lost two other young men to the system también, so that's it's not unique to our environment, to our community, right? I mean, the whole right here, the lo que es el salad bowl, right? The Central Coast. We were experiencing, like I said earlier, just kind of repeating myself now, but this is all too common, just earlier this year también, we've in Watsonville, we've experienced a couple of youth, that passed away, some también una mamá, she a victim of domestic violence, So there's things going on right now, you know, and let alone, you know, it's the little muchacha too at the middle school, right? You know, it was getting into some type of confrontation, and there's a weapon involved and stuff, you know, and so there's something to be said right now, like what's going on? Something to be asked, mejor dicho, you know, it's like what's going on? You know, is it COVID? The impacts, right, of being locked up and isolated in the last 19 months, you know, and then all of a sudden you come back into an environment where just a lot of movement, action, uh, folks trying to find them, you know, yes, reestablish themselves, you know, and the truth is, you know, it's like some of these schools are not prepared. They're super underresourced and underfunded, and they don't have the necessary tools, teachers, counselors to try to provide a like a clean, you know, transition back into schooling, you know. So, but yeah, I mean that's what's going on here in PVUSD. So yeah,
Yeah, and I would say that due to that happening at Aptos High School, the PVUSD School Board, they actually decided to bring back a school resource officer onto campuses, making sure that they're like matched up with like a mental health clinician, which is actually going to cost $1.2 million, right? So like one of the questions that we're asking here at MILPA is, well, why not invest those resources into the young people and be able to, and we were actually all there, right? I was there virtually, like y'all two were there. So what was the experience there for y'all?
Yeah, I'll say for myself, honestly, it was honestly hella sad. Even after when we were walking out, um, and y'all have met him, Edgar Ibarra. He was there with us too, and he asked me, he was like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And I felt hella emotions. Like even though like I knew like going in that there was gonna be hella people that were like on the opposite side and standing like against like our vision and just like what we were trying to bring in and what we continue to try to bring communities. And I was just feeling hella emotions like from the very beginning. Like I felt off. Like I had met prior with some folks and I was just telling them like it just today feels hella weird, like it doesn't feel right. And then so being there and just like seeing all these people like come forward and like give their public comments and just like supposedly being there and like trying to be there for this like young person that passed, but in reality they're just like trying to take care of like themselves and not really caring for the community. Because I know someone that was there, they were like they're continuously trying to like shed tears like here like and be like, oh, like it really hurts us, but in reality like in our communities like we shed these tears all the time. Like this, it's not like a unique story that happened. And it's like I'm not from like this area, but it's like from where I'm from in this like Stanislaus County, like this continues to happen as well. So it's like you see this in a lot of like communities of color. So it really hurt like coming out of there because I like seeing these parents like say like, oh, we're here for our children, but it's kind of like, well, like thinking back, like, are you guys really here for the children? Like, are you really here for the community? Or are you just trying to like implement all of these regulations to like so you can just feel secure in your own self? So it honestly hurt a lot, like and even coming out of like that space. But yeah.
yeah, most definitely. Like no, I feel that, you know, it was challenging, you know. It's always challenging when you go up against you're going up against a system that is rooted in racism, you know. Even if the board looks, or there's people of color on those boards or councils or commissions, you know, it's like you can tell what how deeply and rooted they are in their colonized mindset, you know. um, so for me, you know, what I'll start here though. I'll say to that, but really want to like highlight is like, man, the people, right, pulled up. You know, the folks that have been doing the work here in Watsonville and PVUSD, right? Some estudiantes, some, you know, some parents, you know, uh, organizer advocates, all those, man, they came out, you know. It's like, and that was, to me, that was like, yeah, you know, that's like, this is what it is to like build community, you know, starting to build a baseline, um, supporting that, you know, that process, you know, being able to be a part and support that process, right? Um, to me, it was very motivating, and then it allowed me to like be okay in the space that I was in, You know, it's like them, basically we're like behind enemy lines, you know, but I got backup. That's how I felt, you know. It's like, and we're coming in with the message of, you know, of you know, health resources, right? The good stuff, you know, like the things that we need, you know. It's like, it's not like we were there to be chaotic and all that stuff, you know, but you know, sitting there and listening and always already having like una idea, right, as to like how this vote was gonna go, just based on the circumstances, right, and the incident that happened. You know, it's like this was like a perfect storm for for this type of narrative to come back and the SROs to come back with, you know. It's such an easy narrative for this affluent families that came out, this affluent voice, right, that came out in numbers. You know, it's like I think the last time they came out like in this numbers when they were trying to separate themselves, when Aptos High School was trying to separate itself from PVUSD, right? Um, so having those folks come out, you know, it was for them it was like, yeah, fluent pressure to the board, you know. And it's like, and what's really sad here though too is like even the data that was presented, right? um and remember, data drives policy. I mean, that's just like a rule of thumb, you know. It's like, how can you against the numbers, you know? But the superintendent providing that data, really stating like the how the disparities, right, and how SROs are just going to disproportionately target people, kids of color. You know, they still decided to ignore that data there. And and they already had their minds made up, you know, through, I believe, you know, I hope, I want to believe it was through that affluent pressure, you know, not because of that's what they wanted to do, like all along, you know. Considering that they just had voted for no on SROs the prior year, you know. So, but at the end of the day, you know, it's like, yeah, seeing el racismo up in center, you know, like in the, you know, seeing the prejudice, seeing like the selfishness of these people, you know. Not once did it, you know, was the you know, this muchacho, this kid's family or himself highlighted, you know, prior to this uh to this meeting, right, prior to this vote. You know, there was forums going around, you know, surveys, all that stuff, and letters, and not one time was that kid, you know, in the family. There's a school board or PVUSD or the district, right, you know, ever expressed their condolences until, you know, it's like, so I don't know. It just had me in my feels, but I was, you know, I was impressed there. I was impressed by the folks that came out, that were willing to come out, and understanding that it's COVID, you know, COVID, you know, the Delta variant is running rampant, you know, so everybody, you know, kind of took precautions, but we're able, and that's what it is. That's what it is to go up against the system, you know. It's like we need to be in unison. We need to be we need to be walking with the strong front, you know, and when it's happening. So I'm very optimistic though for the work, the relationships that are being built um, here in the Central Coast, you know, because it's you know, Milpa, we're moving around, you know, we're getting to meet all these cool people, you know. It's like very these estudiantes, you know, organizers, activistas, you know, community members, right? Like just folks that want to get involved, you know. So it's super cool to like, you know, build with folks that are like-minded, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially the young folks. Definitely shout out to PVUSD Students Deserve and Revolunas who are out there in the meeting as well and just organizing. There's a lot of work that goes behind organizing the community because people are really busy with their lives. And this is not a meeting where you get paid or anything like that. It's not like a neat 6 to 7 p.m. That's when the vote's going to happen. People were there up until I think like 11:30, something like that is when they voted, and public comments ended on just that topic alone, right? And so just shout out to everyone, both of you that were there, other Milpa folks, Cesar was there, you know, Edgar, everybody that was there that gave the public comment and really showed up to support community. Because as you mentioned, Bernie, in your public comment at the end after the vote happened, it's feeling the frustration of, in Santa Cruz County, the sheriff's department already receives $92 million. In Watsonville, or like Pajaro Valley, the Watsonville Police Department already receives 43% of the budget. So then that money that was put towards the school resource officer, you're literally taking money away from students that are dealing with poverty, dealing with violence at home, potentially dealing with, like you said, a violence against one another. And so how are we actually resolving the issue at the root of this? Two students like were involved in, like 3 students were involved, 1 student got killed. How are we actually resolving that, right? It doesn't happen with more policing. We have to actually talk to the young people, right? And actually give them the resources that they need to be able to be successful. And it seems that the conversation keeps slipping away into, we need more policing, we need more security, we need more cameras, we need more so-and-so equipment, right? Without actually thinking about the well-being of the individuals. But how do y'all see the connection between what happened at PVUSD and then what happened at in Salinas, I believe is Salinas High School, that they're now trying to put a metal detector? Because there was a gun found in the backpack by one of the canine units in Salinas. There was the black baby doll incident where like the cheerleaders were running rampant with that. And then them considering to bring on metal detectors on campus.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first and foremost, right? I see for me, I see a pattern, right? I see kids acting out, maybe through emotions, rage, premeditation. I don't know, who knows, right? But the common denominator here is that we're all coming off a lockdown of 19 months of isolation, of distance learning, right? Of who knows, some of these homes might be a little rough, on the rougher side. You know, so I think there's something to be said uh, about the lasting impacts that this last year, not just the COVID, right, but everything else that's been going on, all these conversations, all these actions, all the riots, the protests, police brutality, right, just the racism in general, that's been really up front and center, again, just what now is like. So just to say all that, right, who knows what those lasting impacts are going to be on these students, especially coming back into an environment that that is part of their growth, it's part of their development, right? This is kids go to school and, build relationships, find their identity, right? Find their place, like their belonging, certain things, and so it's just, yeah, it's embarrassing to see these, like elected officials and board members, right, to fall back on a system, right, of policing that is rooted in racismo and white supremacy. It's like, is that all you can think of? Like, really, all that education that you might have or schooling that you might have, is like, you're telling me that you're probably still in debt. You're probably still paying for your school, and the best thing you can come up with is a metal detector or more cops. It's an embarrassment. I mean, why not talk to the students? Why not look at the data out there? Why not look at the disparities in our budgets? Why not look at the fact that schools, and I'll say like in PVUSD, right, like in Santa Cruz County, there's a shortage of staff. There's a shortage of school teachers. Eh? It's like, and they want to spend 1 million plus, right, on cops and all these programs, when that we just got to be focusing on the social determinants of health. That's what's really causing a lot of these things. Is that intergenerational trauma, the lack of access to quality healthcare, mentorship, all that stuff. But there is something to be said about all these things that are happening in schools. It's all young people. So Yeah.
Yeah, con eso, I feel like we were just connecting too on the fact that how we're coming back into like society and hanging out with like whomever it may be, and feeling off still, and like not being able to like socialize in that way. And the fact that we're already like, we're a little bit older, like we had that youth experience, and the fact that we're still having trouble like coming back in and like settling in and just like having this conversation still, like whatever it may be. Imagine like these kids who most of these kids like have been locked up for this past, like they haven't had community like conversations or community. And como dijo Bernie, they come, some of them might come from like rough households, and especially because they don't get all of these resources, and then you throw them all into a school where like they lack all those resources todavía, and it just continues to build that fire that they have inside of them, was like, well, they have to like take it out somehow. And if there's nothing else for them to do, it's like you're just kind of setting them up for failure, and that's what it is. But then you would throw them, like you expect them to be like these super mature individuals, but you're not giving them the resources or like the platform to be able to like grow and like develop, because they're still learning. They grasp all of these things. They're like little sponges, and if you freaking put chemicals in them, well, they're gonna deteriorate. So you have to like nourish that, so it's really sad, and it's like disheartening, because como dijo Bernie, like you have all these people who have like, they preach the fact that they have diplomas and they're coming from all these educational like backgrounds, but then they continuously just want to give these communities what they don't want to give to theirs. So it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, and it's definitely difficult to have these conversations, especially with what happened. And just giving a little bit more context about the Black baby doll at Salinas High School is that the cheerleading group actually had like a little Black baby doll that there's actual video and footage of it, and I don't know if it's been deleted since now. There's like a whole Instagram account, right, of them like, stomping on the Black baby doll, calling her, I think the name was like Shaniqua or something like that, right? And it's like, if you're feeling some type of way towards a whole race of people and you're taking that out on this Black baby doll, there has to be a conversation that we have about that, right? Rather than like, oh, we're gonna bring in more cops, we're gonna bring in more, there's something else going on at that school. And it's these tough conversations, rough conversations, like uncomfortable conversations that we have to be willing to have with each other, that's gonna move us forward. But we don't want, like, none of us want to do that, right? Because it's like, oh, I'd rather like sweep it under the rug, not have it at all. And so that could be like a portion of it. And I know that like people did a really great job of like showing up to the school board meeting and giving like public comment when like that incident happened of the Black baby doll. And just like being able to show up for each other. It was like Black and brown unity. And I always really like seeing that, because that's really what it is like, we have to have that unity to be able to have these conversations, because ultimately the enemy is that white supremacy, the racism that honestly we breathe it. Like a lot of times, like we may not even be aware. And if you don't consider yourself worthy or like even able to receive like respect and dignity and love, like you may continue like just kind of ingesting this racism or the living under a system of white supremacy and not even question it and just think, oh, this is just how it is. This is normal, right? When in reality, especially us people that come from like indigenous backgrounds, like we lived in such a way where it's like we had círculos, we actually had conversation with each other, and we still do, right? Like that hasn't necessarily gone extinct, but we need to go back to those ways of being able to have conversation with each other, plática, palabra, being around the medicine, being able to just speak honestly and truthfully with each other, which a lot of people can benefit from outside of like the indigenous cultura, but definitely respecting that and putting that at the forefront. But any other thoughts around like the metal detectors? I know for myself, I mean, at this point in life, like I definitely wouldn't want to walk into a space where I have to like go through a metal detector. I know we do it when we go to like the airport or whatever, and like there's this whole security thing around that. But even like having it be at a school, like just seems like I've never seen that at like a white affluent school. Like I've never seen that, right? But it happens at like low income, Black, indigenous, people of color, kid of color schools, right? And so we need to be able to question that and ask like, well, why is that happening? And why are the decisions that are being made on behalf of poor Black and brown children, like why are these decisions being made above choosing to think about well-being and how somebody, like, what are the resources necessary for an individual to reach their full potential. And so there's a lot there, but I think at the end of the day, it's just, it does hurt to like see very clearly that there's like white people in power that don't give a fuck, and they're just like really blatant about it and they don't care. That's what it feels like. And so, and that's just me as a like watching from afar, right? Because I freaking tune in virtually, but it's like I can see that, like, dude, like the way you're speaking right now, you're saying that you care, that you're here, that you're showing up, that you want to like
gaslighted, you know,
best decisions, but you're still gonna vote to like against the interest of the people that are showing up, telling you, hey, like, we're freaking traumatized. This is like, we don't need more officers, right? And just like exactly that, it's gaslighting, right? Showing up saying, I care about you. It's a freaking toxic relationship. So you gotta be mindful of that.
you know, it's the whole, it's like we really got to look at the unintended, or maybe it's the intended consequences that they're looking for if they bring in SROs or the metal detectors, right? That means that, especially right now, when these tools come in, the metal detectors, for one, everybody's got to go through them, right? That means that kids are going to be probably searched, you know, because here's the thing: if the metal detector picks something up, beeps or something, like what happens after that? After it beeps or it goes off, right? Do you keep walking back and forth or something, or is there like a screen? No, you're going to have someone pat that person down, go be invasive and go through that person's, you know, personal property, you know. I don't know whether it's be physically by hand, you know, or with the wand or something, but like, you know, there's a lot to say. Like, you're gonna have an adult touching your kid, you know, or like, or touching a student, you know. It's like, you know, it's like all that stuff is um it's really putting like what are the teachers not sufficient to do that type of to monitor their schools, right? Monitor their class. Like, aren't the teachers building relationships with these students? You know, it's like it's this is not an SRO police thing. This is a really an administration thing. You know, it's like it's really the schools being under resourced. You know, and years of dilapidation, years of like of being targeted by freaking by the community police already. You know, so I don't even want to say community police, because the police is police, you know what I'm saying? So, but I want to take it real quick, you know, back to the SROs and Aptos, right? So here's the thing: it was kind of thinking about it, it's like when I talk about the unintended consequences here, is this tragedy happened at a white affluent, predominantly white affluent, you know, school, right? Everybody knows when you think about Aptos, you think about white rich folks, or just folks that are just better off, you know what I'm saying? Um, Now this happened to this incident was involved with them brown kids, you know. Now South County, which is Watsonville, is all 84% brown, so that's where these kids probably came from, you know. Well, actually, they came from Watsonville, or at least in the unincorporated areas by Watsonville, right? Um, but this SRO program is really gonna bring in SROs back into the Watsonville campus or PV campus, the two high schools in Watsonville that are predominantly brown, right? So what's gonna happen there? You know, it's like these are the intended consequences that's gonna, like, that these officials, that the board of trustees, like, I don't know if they're not want to see it or they're just what, but a police officer is trained to profile and target kids of color, men of color, right? Now también women of color are LGBTQ relatives también. You know, they're not trained to provide freaking services, health services, mental services, right? Shit, a lot of them don't even go to, I don't even think you need a freaking degree to be a police officer. You know, you just a high school diploma, go through some training, and boom, that's too fast. You know, it's like, and then you're being trained, I believe it's like 140 something hours, or I read somewhere or seen it somewhere, of like basically combat training, right? You know, how to use your weapon, how to, you know, how to restrain people and stuff. And then it's like 8 hours or something of like de-escalation or something, right? And now there's probably more hours than like, what is that? That, what was that? Implicit bias or something like that, right? That getting training, and that's like, man, this is something that training cannot fix, you know? This is people's ideology, you know, like they think that because you have people of color as police officers that now they're community police officers, right? Like, what does that even mean? That's,
There's a
you're
whole
still
institution behind them. So one
yeah.
individual doesn't change anything.
Even if they wanted to do something good, they still have an oath. They took an oath, right? And to uphold the law, and the law is a racist construct. You know what I'm saying? Their own policies and practices and procedures have evolved from a slave catcher, from that individual that used to chase slaves, you know, and beat them, torture them, bring them back. You know, it's like from that construct. This is what, and yeah, it's just, there's so much to be like to unpack here. It's like I get hot even thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? But
so I will say,
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say something that you were talking about made me think about how like sometime in college I learned about how the number of prisons that they build, they base that on 3rd grade reading levels. So if children are not doing well in reading, they're somehow falling behind, which I've worked with children that are not at their reading level. All they really need is a mentor, like a person that's going to help them along, who's going to be really wanting to root for them and push them forward. But if a child is falling behind, they're going to fall further and further if they don't receive the help. And if their parent is of low income background, if their parent doesn't have time, if there's no tutors at all, if there's no way to really get the resources that they need, they're going to keep falling behind. And so there has to be, it's almost like a pool of people that are going to be going into prisons. And prisons are private. They're like private businesses a lot of the time. And so it's just creepy the way that we're going about putting people in cages, intentionally knowing that like the system is already broken and there is going to be a pool of people, and thinking about how like police officers, like they need to have a target. Like if they're policing somebody, like there has to be a target. So then who's the target? The target are the freaking poor brown boys and men and women and girls and freaking, like you said, LGBTQ people, that if you're out of line, if you're not falling into the box, you're going to be targeted, right? And so it's insane. It's just creepy for sure.
I feel like even with schools, like when you're like learning how to do this, whether it's like math or reading and all that, if you don't get it like that week, that because they give you like a week span, right? Like I remember in 3rd grade doing multiplications. It's like, well, this week we're gonna do multiplications and get ready because next week we're dividing. And it's like if you don't learn it in that week span, it's like, well, everyone starts shaming you, right? And the teacher's like, sin que no quieras, like they start telling other kids, like, you know, like basically, oh, like you can't do your like 3 times 3, like, and so it starts adding like this whole pressure to the little kids. It's like, well, I'm dumb, so I'm just going to continue to do whatever I want and not even care about school, when in reality this kid might actually be like a freaking genius or like in general, but they just don't have that resource to be like, maybe they just don't learn by like lectures. They need to actually like physically do something to like see how to multiply or whatever it is. And I feel like that's where like we start to lack, because then that's when like we start to divide all these kids. We're like, oh, well, you have to go in this class, you have to go in that part, and it just feeds into that whole, like we just saw it like on last week when Lydia and the crew were able to talk to like the school to prison pipeline and just like what that does and what it truly means to not have those resources for these kids, because it just like, it's like I said, like it just continues to feed them like what they don't really need.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say. No, for sure, there's a lot to say of like the under-resourced classroom, you know, the overworked teacher, you know, where like, yeah, it's just, it's just, to me, it's like, it's, I don't see how these folks cannot see that the teachers are like, they play a big role in the development of these kids, you know? They spend 8 hours in school, you know, that's like that's a third of the freaking day, you know, that they spend in crucial times of their lives. They're learning, right? They're freaking mimicking what they, you know, what they're learning, like what they're seeing, right? They're all that stuff.
Socializing with other kids.
Socializing, todo eso, and you know, is las maestras, you know, is like they need help too. They need some some how can I say it, like therapy sessions, or counseling sessions, or places where they can actually go and vent too, it's like professionally también, it's like because think about it, it's like they're engaging a full overpacked classroom with a bunch of different little identities, right? Different, it's like all going through the same emotions and stuff, or in different phases of puberty and stuff, you know what I'm saying? And like they have to like deal with it, and so it's like the easiest thing to do is like get rid of them, it's like, man, it's like, again, these maestras, they need trainings too, and they need trainings in regards to race, the most simplest basic construct of life, which is race, it's like, again, the majority of teachers are white, what's to say about that? I don't care. It's like, I mean, I remember my teacher, right, Ms. Volberg, that's like, she's probably German, I think that's German or something. She was super cool, and this was, I don't know, this was a while back, so the classes are probably a lot smaller, right, or something, but seeing the teachers now, I mean, they still kind of look the same. There is more diversity in the, but they're still overworked, they're still, underpaid, and all these things just, they accumulate, and shit, maybe the teacher might not be having a good day, and it's like, we're human, pero the system isn't human. So yeah, there's anyway.
I can see that happening, like the secondary trauma that occurs, right? Because when you listen to anybody speak and they're talking about something that's very emotional, very difficult for them, just because you're listening and asking questions doesn't mean that you don't take on that trauma. There's a such thing as secondary trauma. So I can see that happening to teachers, of especially like a lot of little kids, like going through a lot. Like there's a lot that goes unsaid, but there's also a lot that children talk about, that, hey, this happened to me, or even like bullying at school or whatever it might be. That's a lot of energy to take on. So it would be cool, like there's a way to relieve some of the pressure, right, from the teachers. And it was even said during the PVUSD school board meeting that there's a lack of, like, they haven't hired new teachers, like they're just understaffed. And that's crazy to me to hear that, and to say, but then you're gonna like hire a school resource officer instead of putting your energy towards hiring like qualified teachers that actually want to be there, right? They're instead thinking about, we want to hire a community officer that's going to understand and just be part of the community and be there for the kids. And it's like, well, that person is going to somehow, like, yeah, what are the long-term consequences of that individual being on campus? But even when people are funneled into the school to prison pipeline, and they're in that space of, okay, they've been pushed out of school, and that's happened with individuals that I know Keylin brought it up. Bernie, you were part of that episode of the school to prison pipeline with Lydia. What was that like for you, like speaking about like your experiences of having been in school and like incarceration, which is going to lead us into our next point of, okay, you're pushed out of school, you're potentially in the juvenile justice system, you then go to the adult incarceration system. And even there's like this continued theme of, we don't give a fuck about you. And even more so, once you're incarcerated, we don't give a fuck about you, you don't count, right? Because of the COVID outbreak that happened at the Monterey County Jail. But talk a little bit about the experience of talking with Lydia, and then we'll go into the COVID outbreak at the Monterey County Jail.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's, sometimes talking and like going back into like memory lane, right? Or trying to remember those type of things. It's like, it's kind of crazy because sometimes I forget a lot about the stuff that happened before, but then it's like, when I start diving deeper, the one thing that really came out to the top of my train of thought right now was like the amount of school that I was missing when I started when I got involved in the system, right? And the lack of quality education when you go into these continuation schools or community schools, right? Or alternatives, whatever you want to call them, right? Hopefully they're better now, hopefully like there's better qualified folks and stuff, in those environments. but the level of the lack of support, of moral support to want to be like to uh do the work, and again, the instructors in these schools right here también, they have a big freaking job to do too. Some of them actually like care, and it's like, but you have like a smaller classroom of like kids that are like been pushed out, so and been ran through the system, and now they're on probation. They're like their level of enthusiasm for school, our level of enthusiasm for school, it's like it's really not there. It's like, man, it's like we got other things in our mind now, because we've experienced that arrested. It's the beginning of the what we call your arrested development, right? Where your development as a healthy kid has been locked up, boom, arrested, you're thrown out. So now we got an adult like that. But there's a lot to this to that pipeline, but I think one of the things that I remember most was really having a lot of free time. It's like a lot of time that I should have been in school, and parents were at work. So it's like really no supervision, lack of supervision, as a matter of fact. So it's like, I mean, you're a kid, what are you gonna do? You have, yeah, what I'm saying? So
What would you have needed at that time? And Keylin, feel free to answer that after.
For one, I should have never been pushed out of school. Because when we go to school, when we go into these, regardless, whatever type of behavior I was engaged in, or lo que sea, or whatever it is, the reason that they decided to push me out, right? Keep me in that construct, keep me with my peers, right? Of course, I mean, I don't know, I can say like, oh, mentorship and all that stuff, which is, I probably would, but it had to be school, like a school based everything, because that's what I'm doing there. I'm there to learn, right? I'm there to go through this K through 12, so everything should be focused in education, but not just like the academic education, but la educación, something that's very old and cultural for us, as indigenous people. That's what our folks, had back then. We everyone went through their education development, but the first thing was, and this is at schools too, is like we would learn how it is to sit with ourselves, right? How it is to have respect. What does that mean? It's like how to treat others, how to behave, whatever it is, it's like, again, this, I think that would have been beneficial if that was implemented into this rigorous education system, right? That where, like Keylin said, sometimes you got to learn some stuff like that, it's like, well, people learn different, pero, it's about character development también, it's not just, yeah, like, hey, the truth is some of us come from over police communities, right? Where we see a lot of lateral violence. Why? Because the communities are under resourced. There's a lot of homelessness. Who knows? Maybe I was homeless. I don't know. It's like, did the school ever think about that? Did they ever think about, what are the social determinants of health that I'm missing? That are not there, that are, deteriorating, dilapidating. But I think what I needed to, and above all, everything, was really some compassion, some understanding. Hey, I'm a kid. I was a kid then, it's like they wouldn't treat their kids like that,
Mm-hmm. So. Keylin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like on that same note, I remember like in middle school, like I honestly, like it's like started getting really rough and patchy, like when they had all the probation officers and like SROs coming into like the middle school, and then like just having them to like come in and talk, or like even like in a way kind of being like, oh, like you're doing this, like if you're gonna end up in prison if you continue the same way. And honestly, like I don't know how everything would have turned out if I didn't join. Like there was this organization called TRIO, and it's a college organization that helps you through high school. So because I know my freshman year I was kind of, it was a little rough, like everything that was just happening, like whether it was like my personal life, like I was just like, well, you know, fuck school, like I don't belong here anyways. And they made it apparent that way too, that I didn't belong in that school. And even like opening up the continuation school, like they would always like make it like this whole glamorous thing was like, well, either you guys gonna go in there, or you're gonna end up going like to like juvie or like the prison. And so by joining Trio, the people that were actually working there, like they actually cared about the kids and like who they were like kind of teaching like these new resources. So like the way that they came in and talked to us was like, hey, like we're basically going to show y'all like what it means to be in high school, and then how to like transition into college. And through this, like, you're gonna have a stipend, we're gonna go on trips, and but all these trips was like going to like LA and then going out to like these museums, and then we got like the backstory of it. And every single summer they had like all these like classes that you can actually get college credits for, or like high school credit. So like if you started lacking throughout the year, like they picked up that slack. And so honestly, without Trio, I honestly don't know where I would have ended up, because like I got a lot of help from them, but because the people that were there honestly cared. Like till this very day, George, like which was like the like director at that time, and Santiago, like they led me through till this very day. Like I still talk to them, and then like continuing the conversations, like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. And but like they still care, you know, they're not like, okay, well, you're done, like goodbye. And they're just like, they continue that growth. And it's like, that's what we need in more of these schools, because it's that whole difference. Like there was two separate like ways that I could have gone, and I joined because I was just kind of like, oh yeah, we got to go on trips and get money, but like ended up working out in the end. And I was actually able to like, they had like these whole ceremonies and graduations where like they would not just appreciate what you did like academically, but you as a growth as a person, and they showed you like that progress throughout the years. So honestly, with like how I said, like without that, who knows what would have happened, because it was crazy. But like I appreciate like that whole part. And they don't have to do these things, you know, like they come in like to these communities and they tell you like, hey, like tell your friends to join, like and then so it was like I told my sister like, hey, like you're joining, like, and then she got a lot of out of it. And on my little brother coming in as a freshman, like he also gets to join. So it's like now like 3 separate generations where we're able to like come in and be like, hey, like this is the growth we've seen. And especially coming from like a first generation, like my parents, like they migrated over here, so it was like they didn't have that background knowledge, and if they did, it's like I can't really help you because I don't understand what you're doing, or like I'm busy, like I have stuff to do también, because like they need to continue to have like that roof over my head and like that food on the table. So it's just like different orgs or like things like that, like that's like what we need to like see that progress.
Not SROs.
Yeah, and I would agree, because I know for myself, there's been a lot of factors to my success. My family first and foremost, right? Just always being supportive, but it's just also recognizing that my dad almost like died, like trying to like provide a roof and like making sure that we had food and all that stuff. And when I say that, I'm not, it's like for reals, like he has a lot of health issues that because he worked himself to the bone, didn't think about like his nutrition, didn't make time for exercise because all the time he was working. It's like, I'm here because I stand on the shoulders of my family. And even I'll say of students that honestly like were pushed out, like we don't live in a world right now where like everybody equally has the chance and the resources. There's only enough resources and like little breadcrumbs for like certain people. So like me having gone to college, it's cool, but it's also like there's a lot of people that didn't have that chance. Like, not that you have to go to college to be considered successful in any way, but if that was what you wanted to do, there wasn't enough resources, at least me having grown up in Hayward, for all students, because there's only so many. The teacher only had so much time for like 30 kids in a classroom. The counselors that we only had like 6 counselors. One counselor was assigned to like however many, like, I don't know, we had a school of like 2,000, let's say, right? There's only so many counselors. There's only so many like resources. I remember going to the after school program, like they didn't help me. Like they freaking, like I showed up and my dad was like freaking yelling at me, like, you can't be getting an F in this algebra class. Like, we're not going to have this shit, like threatening me with violence. Cause that's how it was in my family. Like, you're going to get your ass beat if you don't pass this fucking class. And it's like, well, I went to the after school program. I showed up. All they really told me was sit there and do your homework. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this shit. Like, I need help. Right. So it's like, that shit is hella stressful, but I imagine like way more stressful on individuals that were pushed out of school early on, right? That weren't given that chance. And And so that's why we're having this problem. We have this problem of like mass incarceration of people being in that space. It doesn't it's by design. It's not that like people are inherently like, that's the narrative that they try to spread, right? That like there's something wrong with our people, that we're like prone to criminality, whatever it might be, right? But really it's to be able to fill those prisons and make money for other individuals. And so going back to being pushed out and being pushed through the school to prison pipeline, we did put out a press release recently about the COVID outbreak at the Monterey County Jail, and just kind of giving a little bit of context. There might be more individuals at this point, but at that time when it was put out on the 17th or 18th, there was an article by the Monterey County Weekly of 130 inmates being, testing positive for COVID, up to 17 sheriff's deputies, up to 5 contractors. Again, it might be more just because more like time has passed since then. But what are your thoughts, starting with Bernie, of like, just like what's happening right now? Like what's going on? What are your thoughts on this?
Man, I'm gonna tell you, this is a leadership fault, right? This is a derelict of duty. This is what you call incompetency. This is what you call abuse of authority and power from the sheriff's department. I mean, not too long ago, right? The board of supervisors, they passed something around all county employees must be vaccinated, right? And you have all this narratives like, oh, you can't infringe on my rights, and no, I'm not gonna do that because you're telling me to do it. All this stuff, it's like, well, that's your prerogative, right? But as a county employee, especially someone that the sheriff, right, especially them that are the only ones that have access to in and out of that jail, right? For him not to support that mandate, for the safety of the people, right? Especially for the safety of those that are vulnerable inside those walls, right? This is what's gonna happen. And what do you think? They're immune to COVID? It's like, the truth is, it's like, but it's interesting, it's like COVID or the Delta variant, right? You don't see these white communities, right, being hit with COVID, a big COVID outbreak, so because they have those resources, right? They have they're able to like kick back and like really take care of themselves. Now, these jails, like, here in Monterey County, it's like these folks that have resources too, what I mean? Like, they have the resources where they can like just not take a vaccine. They don't have to take a vaccine, right? That's how they feel. Like, I got enough privilege that I don't need to do this. Right now, they caught it, and without them like caring, right, about other people's health, now they're sick. Now you have 130 inmates sick, and who knows? It's like, how? I mean, hopefully everybody's safe. Hopefully that everybody's getting the medical attention that they need. But just from seeing and reading like what COVID does, it's like, on top of being locked up, being deprived from proper socialization, of climate, right? Proper, you're inside of proper visuals, right? Just freedom in itself, on top of all that, now you're like in there in a cell, freaking almost dying, right? And while these sheriffs that have COVID get to kick it in their house, with the proper health, healthcare. What I'm saying? Like, it's negligence. The board of supervisors should really start thinking about hitting up the Department of Justice or the state attorney general, investigate this dude, investigate this office that has had so many complaints, so many I mean, they just got caught not that long ago, committing fraud, forgery, stealing from the county. And the DA is right here just saying, oh, it's like, it's not something serious, right? So all these things, come into play with this outbreak. It's not I mean, who brought it in, right? It wasn't the inmates, you know. It was. This is just again, you know, it's freaking medical racism or something. I don't know. Put a term to it. Anything, but it's got to have racism in there. You know, tell you that much because that's what this is. You know, and it's like, and there's this narrative that, you know, just yeah, I don't even know. But I'll tell you this much: being in there through an outbreak like this, you ain't getting no help. You're gonna get help to the moment where like you're actually breaking something inside the cell, or you cause it. You know, it's like that's the only, or you're actually like probably just yeah dead, you know, flatline. You know, so it'd be interesting to see what happens. You know, what type of response, accountability is gonna go down. You know, because you know something has to happen here. You know, it's like understanding that you know the sheriff is an elected official, so he doesn't answer to the board of supervisors. He answers to the people, to those that have voted him in, right? But the board does hold his purse. You know, they hold the money. So maybe it's time for the board of supervisors to restart thinking about how to restructure the way Monterey County deals with incarceration. Let's start, and this is the second outbreak that's happened. The first one, the advocates, organizers, people, MILPA, we're all talking about it. It's going to go down in the jails. And well, it's going down again. And as long as this virus is around and it's hitting, our communities like this, that those that are locked up are always going to be what some of the most vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable populations that can be affected, right? With the least amount of freaking support or health care access.
Yeah, I feel like Bernie hit it the nail on the head. It just kind of, it's one of those things where it's like you think that like, are they doing this on purpose type thing? Because they know that it's going to be an easy way to just like take everyone out that's in there. Because like it's just easy for them, like, oh, it was just COVID, like it wasn't our fault type thing, So, and just like even hearing them, everyone that's like been speaking on it and just being like, well, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, what do you mean it's not that big of a deal? Like these are people's lives that like are at risk, and you're just kind of like brushing it under the rug. Like if it's like some type of like small fever, So yeah, I feel like it's just that continuous conversation that we need to be having of that these folks, like Bernie said, like they are vulnerable, and they have to like be in these like confined spaces where it's like, as it is, like having to go through the pandemic and already like incarcerated and having like all of these systems like impacting them. Like I feel like it just adds to that, where it like who knows what's gonna continue to happen or like why it's happening, but it's just like hella sad on that part.
Yeah, and it's a situation where they're even cut off from seeing their families, right? Because they're not allowing people like visitation. They're not allowing, and that's like a huge part of like if you're already incarcerated and you can't see your family, like I would imagine that might be really difficult. And so we're not considering the lives of these people because we've already decided, oh, they're trash, like we don't really care, right? And so it can be really hard to like see that people are not taking it as seriously or just not caring, because we've already been conditioned in such a way where, well, they did something wrong. There's like murders in there. There's people that did violent crimes. Like we don't care. But the reality is that there's a lot of people that are in there just because they're poor. They couldn't make bail, or they just got caught up when they were young. And so we have to like push up that narrative too, of like being able to talk about like it's more complex than one might think. And that's why like conversation and debate is so important, but we're not really engaging in that, because it's really difficult and it's really hard. So yeah, there's nothing else to say on that. It's just a tough situation. We're all kind of dealing under the pandemic, but there's people that lose out even more than us, right? There's a lot of privilege that I have as a freaking, I can go ahead and do whatever, go on about my life, whereas there's a lot of individuals that don't have that freedom to move around, and have the healthcare that they need to be able to really take care of themselves and put themselves first, and then be healthy individuals, to be there for their family and for their community. And so it could be really rough to live in that type of space and to come to that realization and to live in that truth, because it's hard to swallow and understand that, like, fuck, like we lived in a fucked up environment, or in a fucked up system, right? Where like human life is, we don't care about it because we live in a capitalistic system. And if we're not making profit, we don't care. Like if you're not producing at the end of the day as a child, if those numbers aren't coming in through the school of like Bernard's producing X amount of whatever, you're gonna, like, I don't know what your situation was, but like that's how I envision it happening. Like you're not producing, you're freaking like you're out, right? Like you're not making it happen.
Yeah, no, black and brown bodies then are being devalued, you know, and it's being devalued in our humanity, but being put a price tag in this capitalistic, you know, the prison industrial complex, right? The system found a way to make money off people, black and brown people, you know.
Even though the 13th Amendment has been eradicated, so there's
No,
still a little loophole.
You know, it's like it never got eradicated. Huh? It never got it just the language, but it still says that slavery is okay
if you're incarcerated.
So regardless, though, that emancipation it never happened. Because why, you know, we can go into that, like the whole, you know, it's like, okay, you're free now, but you're gonna go to jail if you don't have a job, but there's no job for black people or brown people or whatever, you know, it's like, it's just the system, right? Gaslights people, you know, it's like
Jim Crow,
yeah,
just like mask it all out,
you know, but it just I want to say this one thing, it's like this outbreak. The sheriff's department receives 120, I want to say 22 or 27 million dollar, but has a 122 27 million dollar budget, something like that. And they were allocated, one of their budget line items, right, was allocated to for COVID-19 purposes, right? So it's like, well, what have you been doing with the budget line item? What have you been doing with that money? That now you have 130 people infected in the jail when it was your job, duty, and responsibility to ensure that doesn't happen because you asked for this money, right? You manipulated the system and found a way to get more money, like the greedy department that it is, you know. And this money that's being taken from community, that something could have been used for something else, you know. So just think about it like that too. It's like, you know, what is this department doing with the money that is meant to do to fight COVID in there or protect individuals' lives in there through preventative measures, whatever that looks like, whether it's cleaning supplies, freaking social distancing, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, talk about this stuff for days.
All right, y'all. So with that, we're going to move into the second portion of our conversation, which is reclaiming indigeneity. Something that you said, Bernie, was devaluing brown bodies, indigenous bodies, black bodies. And so something that we're doing at MILPA is reclaiming our indigeneity. This is Palo Santo, and just one of the medicines that we use to be able to bring ourselves back to the present moment. There's a lot going on at once all the time. And so it could be really difficult to move forward and get depressed, honestly, and like deal with mental health issues because there's so much impacting our people, especially indigenous people, that it can get easy to get caught up and be angry, honestly, get caught up in our feelings and whatnot. But that's why we burn the medicine. We take care of ourselves with the medicine. And so I'll pose to y'all, Reclaiming Indigeneity Part 2. What does it mean to you? Anything that has gone on? I know, Bernie, you were part of the first conversation. Keylin, you've already been engaging in conversations at MILPA about reclaiming indigeneity, but feel free to take it away with just how has that process been for you?
Yeah, it's been a trip because I feel like coming into, okay, so first and foremost, right off the bat, I was growing up, obviously I'm Mexican American, I'm a Chicana, and I grew up, my parents were like, they followed along with the traditions and they were very like, I guess culturally aware in that way, but they were very young when they had me. And so when they moved out here, it was different because it was always just like with whoever was around, like, and I was connected to my grandparents, but not until I got older. So growing up and like I had all this colonization like throwing at me, and even the peers around me, like having like that internal racism that they like kind of put it onto me, right? And so growing up, I was just kind of like, damn, like, do I really appreciate my culture like that? And so I finally went my first year of college. That's when I started like disconnecting from those friend groups that I had and just being like, I really do enjoy like being a part of my culture and not actually like participating and learning more about it. So that's when I started doing and reading a lot more of like actual like people of color and people who look like me in that way. And it was interesting like what aligned and what like brought me to especially like being here with MILPA, because like I started going to like different events that like they were having at school. And one time I went to an event and I just pulled up because I was like, well, whatever, like I'm just gonna see what it's about. And it was Dolores Huerta. And like so I sat down and it was like just like hearing her speak and hearing like her like just comment and just like being in like Modesto and everything. It was super cool. So I feel like that's when it all started. So then like coming in and like being at MILPA, then like seeing like all of the medicines, like hearing these words that I had heard like being thrown around like by my grandma, my maternal grandmother, it was pretty cool. But I still felt that disconnection because I didn't feel like it was like mine, but it felt like it was like very welcoming. But it just like it just felt normal. Does that make sense? Like to just like come in and like pick these things up or just like pick up or like be okay with like listening to even like songs. It just felt like it came second hand or like second nature. And so like when I started connecting with my grandmother and being like, hey, like, do you know about like the mezcales, or what do you know about this? Like, what do you know about our culture? And she has all these stories and like she's been telling me all these stories, but it's like not never engaging with it, you know? And even the fact of just like she had them, but she didn't know if I was interested in like even like listening to what she had to say, or if like I would just like, oh, like my grandma's crazy. And so even being around that, and like now whenever like I personally like I'm feeling hella crazy, or like I'm just like, damn, like this too overwhelming, like I find myself gravitating to that medicine and just like trying to like understand like why it was. And I feel like even this week in itself, like from the like Sunday starting off like hanging out with my family and it being hella peaceful, and like the next day like talking to the elder Lupita and her husband Masa, and just like being able to be in that space and like reconnecting with like who I am like internally. I feel like that was really powerful. And then like the next days having that conversation with the MILPA crew and Saira Pinto, it just like elevated everything and like kind of connected all the dots. Is like I understood why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I understand like why now, like where it all comes from and where it all stems from, and like it makes sense. And shout out to Alexis, because Alexis, honestly, like he pulls through with all these things from Acámbaro, because my mom's from Acámbaro, Guanajuato. And I've always known about Jalisco because my dad, he's like, you know, very prideful, like where he comes from. And like, that's super cool. But that's all I've ever known. I've always ever known about Jalisco. So like now, like learning more about Guanajuato and even like the fact that my mom's just like, when yo, like when I pass, like find me and like do all of these things, like that's super cool, you know, like. And obviously like I don't know how that's gonna work out, but you know, like I'll try my best, mom. But yeah, like even all that. So I'm like super grateful and like for like everyone, like every single time I have a conversation with someone from MILPA, like I get new teachings, and like some like they always give me like these small little gems, you know, like that I'm able like, all right, cool, like throw in a little sack because like I'll pull this out for later. So it's been a super interesting experience, and it's come like secondhand. And it's been super cool because I know like even like now appreciating like my skin color, because I know when I was younger, like some like close friend groups, like they would make it apparent. And even like sometimes in my family, they'd be like, oh, like ponte una gorra porque te vas a empretar, but not even like because like they were like, oh, like so you won't get darker, you know. And it was just kind of like, now that I'm older, it was like, well, like you were like kind of projecting all your emotions onto me, when now like I come like to my cousins or like whatever it is, I'm like, dude, like your skin is beautiful, like whatever it is. And just like appreciating that fact and like appreciating the culture overall. And I feel like now that's what it like kind of means to me to like kind of reclaim that indigeneity and like learning every single day, because like I still don't know everything. I probably still will never know. Like I'll till the day I pass, I'll probably still be learning the day something like the night before, whatever it is. But that's kind of a little bit like what it is or like how it's been. But yeah, I'll go ahead and open up to y'all.
Yeah. So I remember the first conversation, right? Oh man. That was so interesting. And that was like, I don't know, I think that was like one of the first freaking episodes that I was in too, or like kind of been a part of. I think I was like barely I mean, this whole new process for me también, you know, it's like, it's new. I've read about it, right? I read about it. Um, heard my tias talk about it, but I never put it into practice myself, you know. And it's like really understanding like what indigeneity is. It's like really it's reclaiming our indigenous identity, you know, going back to anti-colonial, you know, construct, you know, it's like a natural construct that we were interrupted from. So just, you know, being able to say that I'm living my best life now, you know, that I'm the that I'm as this is the most healthiest in mind, body, spirit that I've ever been, right? And it's because I've, you know, trying to connect to my roots, trying to connect to these old ways, you know, of doing things, of thinking, right? You know, I heard a professor say, you know, that was teaching, he teaches Nawa, right? It's not speaking Nawa, it's thinking Nawa, right? So it's like, it's not talking about indigenous views, right? Yeah, I mean, it's like it's a holistic approach to our identity, you know. But again, you know, there's we have our whole lives, up to this point that we've been saturated with that internalized racism. We've been saturated by oppression and with racism, right? We've been under constant occupation. Our spirits have been like John Trudell, you know, it says, you know, the system is really mining our souls, our spirit, you know. What we're living is like, man, there's little by little squeezing that spirit away from us. But now it's like we're reclaiming that. It's like, nah, hold on. You know, I understand that there's something going on here. And I just appreciate it to be able to like pay attention to nature now, you know, like enjoy nature actually, as a matter of fact. You know, something so simple as, you know, seeing an eagle to seeing an ant and being appreciative of it, you know, it's like paying attention to what, like the lives of the four-legged, the wing of the wing relatives, right, of the two-legged, you know, reading about those things and then trying to put it into practice también, or see like the things that you read, see them out here in nature, like, oh shit, you know, it's like, I just read about that. Why know a little bit about this now? You know, it's like, but really being like, really just being in commune with those four elements, you know, with life in general. Like that's life, you know. We're made out of fire, water, air, and earth, you know. And before it was like, well, you know, I was made out of, you know, the process, right? And that was to the extent, like that's just nature was just the reproductive system. It was nothing else, you know. It's like, so just, yeah, I don't even know if I hope I said more than I did the first time. But you know,
I think it might be one of those topics where, again, we may be talking and not feel like we're saying anything, right? Because it's something so vast and so deep that it can be difficult to touch on everything. But I do appreciate what y'all have been sharing. And I will say that decolonizing is, for myself, will be a lifetime process, because there's already been 30 years of living under capitalism, colonialism, thinking that it's that I need to that the way to get ahead is to be exploitive, to not care about my body or my feelings or my thoughts, and putting others before me. And so it's been really interesting to, when I find myself searching through Netflix, looking for authors, looking for culture and readings and just any type of art to be able to take in, I'm trying to be mindful that it be people of color, because I've already had white supremacy shoved down my throat via movies, via books, via, like, I know more about white people than they know about me. So why not do myself the service of learning about me and being able to watch movies and read books and pick up cultura of people that look like me, that I can learn from, that I can benefit from, that I can heal with, right? And so I think that's what reclaiming indigeneity has been for me, and it's oftentimes a very emotional process too, because it's a lot of times I catch myself feeling super colonized, like, oh shit, the way I made that decision was stupid, and it's because I didn't know any better, because I'm super colonized, and it's actually not the best way to go. And it's painful to say I'm wrong, and I don't like being called out, but it's like, if I take a step back and recognize, is this the best for the collective, or am I just being hella selfish and like wanting things my way because this is the way that I understand it in my little process of how I've understood the world and how I've grown. And so it's a very humbling experience to be able to engage with the cultura in such a way where you're wanting to heal. And so that's what that process has been like for me. But I will say that, like, picking up the gourd and shaking the gourd, and, you know, being able to like be in ceremony, be in sweat, be able to be in nature, engaging with the medicine, all of that has been really healing for me. But it's a step-by-step process, because there's a lot of resistance in me that I don't want to change. I want to stay the same, because that's what I know. That's my comfort zone. So I don't want to change, right? And so I'm always wanting to like challenge myself to, like, dude, you know, move forward. Like there's nothing there for me in the space of like comfort. I want to keep moving forward. And the truth is that like transformation is painful. And so just being okay with that process and accepting myself as I am, for sure. Because I think that there's always going to be pieces of information that we don't know from our culture. Like I struggle a lot with the fact that like I can't tell you my lineage or my tribe, or like, you know, like if somebody were to freaking ask me. But it's been helpful to have these conversations with individuals. Like I know, Bernie, you brought up, like, it's okay to say I don't know, and to say like I'm still searching for them, because it's true. Like I don't know my tribe, but I can always say, well, that's how we know that colonization is winning, is that I don't freaking know my tribe. I don't know my lineage. I can't pick up a book and know, or like no one in my family knows. Maybe if I started like having more of those conversations, but as far as I know, like people don't know. People just know, oh, we're Mexican, and that's it. But not anything having to do with our indigenous lineage. And there's little hints here and there, right? Like there's a picture of my great-grandfather, my maternal great-grandfather. He was brown, tall, like super indigenous features. My dad has very indigenous features too. And being able to see that in our familia, and recognizing, oh, okay, I don't fully know, but it's there. And so like, how can I just kind of pick up what I do know and run with it, and be able to like care for it in such a way where this is mine, and not feel like a fraud? Because I felt like that for a long time. Like, I'm a fraud. I don't know what the hell. These people know more than I do. Like, I don't want to come in and like look stupid or anything like that. So it's been interesting. It's been an interesting process. But how do y'all feel? Like, what's the difference between reclaiming as an individual and reclaiming as a collective? Like as a collective, do you feel any type of difference? Like, what is it like at MILPA in particular?
I can see the the healing, right? The healthiness. Something that I practice personally también, but it's so much easier to be able to be in a collective that practices as a whole también. That our individual work that we're doing, it's actually collective work. You know, and I'm able to like vibe and thrive, strive at MILPA, you know, with the folks that I work with, you know, with the folks that I'm building healthy relationships with, you know, that we are able to sit in ceremony together and have fun, you know, have fun healing, have fun actually de-traumatizing ourselves, decarcerating ourselves. We're enjoying it. We're enjoying the process, whether it's however hard it is, because we understand that we have our, we're being rooted in cultura, in our ancestors, and you know, understanding that we are ancestors of all this dream. We're somebody's seventh generation, right? So for me, it's like I wouldn't change this for the world. You know, it's familia. you know, and an extended family. And I love my folks. I love Milpa, you know, Keylin, Rosaura, y'all my folks, you know what I'm saying? So um, we're in this together, you know, and it's like, you know that, and I think that's how we all feel. Like we got each other's back. Even if one of us on the fence, you know, just know it's like, hey, we still got your back regardless, eh? You know, it's like, cause that's like, we come from that type of lineage. We come from that tribal freaking background, you know, like we're tribal people. We're indigenous folks, you know, you know, it's just all that stuff, man. But
Yeah, I feel like you could definitely like see the growth in everyone and the healing that everyone has had, because like no matter like when they tell you like their backstories or like how they grew up or like different things about it, like, and you see how much like how they're able to talk to you and like tell you about what they've earned and gained through it. It's a lot more, you know, and it's not something like that you can like physically come out and tell them like, here, like take this bag, this is what I know. And it's more so like, so what is it? Brendan was talking about it the other day, where it's like that teaching that you have that you gain a lot more about it. But even like looking back, like sometimes when people in like my immediate family would be like, oh, like only this like small thing is what matters, but it's like that colonization part that they were thinking like, well, that's why then you end up not caring for your community or like others around you. But it's that extended family that you end up grounding yourself with sometimes, and like sometimes like you're able to have harder conversations with them because it's like your chosen family, if you will. So it's definitely been interesting, especially with Milpa, because even though it's like sometimes like the work that we do can be hard, but then you come back and you're able to like talk to folks and like see like what they think about it, or like like you get a different perspective también through it, and you're able to go about it in a more like healthier aspect to it. Because I know sometimes even when like someone says something like crazy like around me, like that's not part of me, or like at school or like in other aspects, I'm just like, I could have seen how in the past I'd be like, what are you talking about, like, and like kind of respond in a different way. But then now coming in like from like a loving aspect, even if like they don't like reciprocate it back, but it's just like, well, this is how I want to like go about it. So like I can definitely like see like that progress, but it's like it's been because of like that healing and like kind of reclaiming and going back to like that original root of it.
Yeah, I definitely see that, because I feel like the collective healing and health and growth, I guess, trickles down, like that's a weird word, but trickles down to the individual, but the individual waters the collective. So it kind of like goes both ways, right? Because it's like being like spending time alone individually for myself, and being able to decide to, okay, I'm going to use these next 30 minutes for prayer and for burning medicine and for like just spending time in my space to heal and to let go. That's going to come back and hopefully benefit the collective in a good way. And I see that happening with like other people, that like if you care for yourself, it's going to show up in the collective when we all come together and like have spaces. For example, when we were with like Saida on Tuesday, right? And all of us freaking like being overly excited to be near each other. Like I was super just happy to be near people. We were eating together, catching up, talking, connecting, laughing, freaking just having a good old time while also doing the work. And so that was just, it's super palpable. And even Saida, when she walked in, she's like, y'all are intense. Like there's a lot going on here, right? And so it's cool to be able to be in that space and be able to just be my full self and be authentic, and for people to accept that. And so I appreciate that. And yeah, it's been a trip. Like it's been a trip for sure. I think one of the things that I'm trying to work on is being able to be more intentional around prayer, because I have my altar, I have my medicine, I have everything that I need to do it. I just need to have it be a practice of a daily practice, in other words, right? Because I think that right now what's happening is that I'm just kind of deciding when I feel like it, I'll do it. Whereas, well, if I really committed to a daily practice of prayer and burning medicine and giving myself that space and time, that'll make all the difference in the world. But there's apparently other more important things that I choose to do. Of, again, I'm still colonized, so I freaking make these decisions sometimes of, I'm just going to stay up late watching Netflix, a show that I've already seen 3-4 times, that is made by white people. I'm going to just watch it again because I have to, right? So there's still a part of me that has that resistance of like, I know what to do for myself, but I'm still gonna decide to like choose something else over me and my well-being. So that's been a struggle. But how has it been for y'all? Like, is there anything that you're working on the daily that you feel like, when it comes to the topic of reclaiming indigeneity, like what is it that you're working on currently, if like you feel comfortable sharing, that you feel like, man, if I just did this thing and engage with the cultura in this way, this will like take me to the next level?
Yeah, I feel like one thing that and it's barely been like in the last couple months that I've been able to kind of see in myself that I have to, I guess, heal, is that like inner child, you know, because it's like I feel because of the past, like it's been that oppression and like that machismo that keeps getting like pushed down onto me. Like got pushed down onto like who I was as a little kid. So I always like repress it because it's like it's hella traumatizing, like to go in and just be like, okay, well, like let's talk about this, even though it's all internal, right? Sometimes it is like, yeah, I talk about it out loud or like just to like my friends or whoever it may be. But even like being able to connect that way with like my siblings, and like even though like we're still connected to like our parents and stuff, but at the same time being able to see like where it all stems from, you know. And I feel like from now that I'm able to finally have these conversations with them, and like we're able to kind of come back, like the three of us, and just be like, okay, well, now we're the ones like are guiding ourselves or and like teaching each other type thing, and we can learn from others. And I feel like that's one way that we can like, at least for myself, that I'm like trying to reconnect, because that breaks that little barrier that was kind of having me just not want to be like fully there, because I knew that it was, I can't fully heal or can't fully like connect to like the indigenous part if I'm still like holding myself back in some aspects in that way.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Keylin. You know, I think for me, it's really just, you know, a day by day process, to try to do right, come correct, you know, with what I've been learning, internalizing, um, from the songs, right, from burning the cedar, the copal, you know, those familiar smells, right? Really trying to do it every morning, and it's like, and it's something that's became kind of almost um what's that, you know, not a habit, but ¿cómo se llama ese? Man, I have it in the tip of my tongue, yo. Anyways,
A
I'll come back
ritual?
to it. No, not a ritual. It's almost like a habit, a reflex. There we go. Reflex. It's almost like an automatic, natural reflex. You know, like if I feel some type of way, I'm gonna go burn my cedar, bless myself up, boom, and it works.
Mm.
That's the crazy part. I can get all agitated, this and that, or whatever, you know, and I'll go and burn it. You know, my thoughts, you know, it's like, hey, you know, think about what happened, you know, bless myself up. And it's like, it makes me feel it's a little lighter, you know. I'm not saying that I'm healed. I'm just saying that I feel like, you know, it's like it's the type of meditation, maybe. I don't know. It's like people do breathing work, you know, or stuff to like when they're feeling some type of way. Which everything, all that stuff is good, you know. It just, I burn my cedar, or I burn my local palo, a little bit of sage, um, you know. But it really putting that into daily practice, you know. Um, you know, I have two plants in my room, you know, and talking to them, having that in the intentions, you know, or just even like I would try to prove myself, like, is this really like, is this really true, right? If you talk to plants, they grow better, healthier, you know. It's like, I don't know, but let's try it out. Being curious, right? The curiosity that this that reclaiming my indigenous identity is bringing, you know. It's working its way through the arrested development, through the incarceration, through that trauma, right? It's snaking through, you know, and it's breaking barriers, you know, it's knocking down walls, you know. And it's like, but don't get me wrong, you know, I still got my moments. Shit. You know, what do you think? Just because I've been doing this practicing or trying to figure things out with like the last year or two. Now, like Rosaura said, spending already decades of trauma, decades of occupation, right? Decades, suffering from decades of my spirit being mined by the system, so but through the collective, that's through the collective, it's there's power, there's power in these ways, there's like, I believe, I'm a believer.
Yeah, and I like what you said. You painted a really cool visual of almost being able to create like a little force field around you, of being able to still snake through all of what's coming up before you in life, that you're still able to, well, I have my medicine, I have my cultura. It's presenting that barrier where a lot of times people try to numb themselves with alcohol and drugs. Is that good for you in the long term? Is that healthy for your body? Are you making the best decision? I'm not anybody to tell anybody else how to live their life. But at the same time, there's also the alternative of being able to, like, if you are indigenous, or even if you're not, right? Like being able to tap into your cultura. La cultura cura is not only for Mexican, brown, indigenous people, right? It could be for anybody. Like tap into your cultura. And it's especially interesting for white people. Like, what does it mean to tap into your cultura and like look at the history of white supremacy and being able to really just like reflect on that, right? Because that's a conversation too with yourself. Like, what does it mean to tap into like the violence that has been exacted on other individuals, other cultures, a whole people's genocide, rape that has happened due to that ancestry that you might have. So, and us as Mexicans, we're both like, we're freaking like the colonizer, the colonized, the oppressor, the oppressed. We have Spanish blood, we have indigenous blood. Some folks have African American, or not African American, but African blood. So it's just interesting to try to engage in those conversations because it might be difficult. But any final words out there regarding just any current events that are happening, but especially this conversation on reclaiming your indigeneity for your peoples out there?
Honestly, I just say like, stay strong and like stay with your community. Like find your group of folks who like you're able to have these like tough conversations with, because it gets hella sad, and like all of a sudden like you feel like you're all alone and nobody else like understands you, especially like if you're talking to people who don't really look like you and didn't have like the same experiences or similar experience to you growing up, because their lives are hella different. So just find your community and stick together, because I feel like it definitely does, like having a group of folks who you're able to come with and just like heal in that way, whatever it may be like going on. I feel like it truly does help. And then push out the SROs because we don't really need them.
I will say for myself, final words out there. Whew, it may be difficult for you to be who you are, but please be who you are, be authentic, love yourself, accept yourself. A lot of times we have a lot of pressure to be like other people, and that can get us in trouble, right? We may find ourselves feeling really upset and sad due to peer pressure or due to just wanting to fit in. But I guarantee you there's like 7 billion people in the world. Your tribe is out there. Go find them. I'm like really thankful and appreciative that, I feel like I always hear it at MILPA that things aren't a coincidence. Like they happen because they're meant to happen that way. And so I appreciate that there's a lot of intentionality in our lives. And so being able to appreciate that, accept that, understand that, yes, we have valleys, we have valleys, we also have peaks. We have moments where we're just really extremely happy and ecstatic, but we also have moments of just, low points where we have to just learn a lesson. And so being able to balance all that out and finding your balance, finding your equilibrium. So I hope you find that for yourself. I hope you love yourself. I hope you understand that you're sacred, and that if you are indigenous, even if you're not, that you seek your cultura, you find your cultura, you find refuge in your people, because there's people out there that really want to engage you. And seek out MILPA if you're in the area of the 831. Even if you're not, I'm in the 510 and I have found refuge in MILPA. So being able to find your people and being okay with who you are and showing yourself as you are, because I think that's something that we value, is that palabra, that honesty, that truth of, you may not have all the answers, but you're at least trying to be as honest with yourself as possible, and that it's okay to come as you are. So love yourself. Pass it to you, Bernie.
Yeah, for sure. Gracias, both of you. I know it's like, it's interesting what you said right now. It's like about the answers. And I was like, yeah, we don't have the answers, but we have a process. Try it out. But to say to my, my thing is like, folks, listening to this, or, don't be complacent with the system, man. Challenge it. Challenge those narratives. Challenge the narrative that the police makes, is making our community safe, or is making our school safe, or that the police has the answer, right? That's some BS. Tap into your experiences, to what you see in the community, right? To your direct or indirect experience. Think about like, what do those kids need, or what do those families need, right? What does my family need? Yeah, always be critical about the things that are being said, from a system that has been built and it continues to evolve to continue to oppress, suppress, and repress people of color. We see it. You can't deny it. We can't deny it. I'm willing to take up that fight, and hopefully, y'all, are getting your education right, are getting your hopefully your needs are being met, and but don't forget about your cultura, about your identity. It's easy to get absorbed by the current trendy new thing out in society, right? Stay grounded. We come from some say that we come from the stars, because every mineral, nutrient, particle that you find in the star, you find it in the human body, right? Some say that we come from the corn, but at the end of the day, it's like we come from that, from from the tierra, from the creator. It's something that we always have to be mindful of. Dar gracias, give thanks, honor that cycle of life, those elements. Earth right now, climate change, all that, honor it. Do your part, try to maintain it. At least it's a lot more I want to say, but just everybody just dijo Rosaura, practice self-love, self-compassion, meditate, good rest, do good in school, hope that your jobs and parents and families, cousins, brothers, sisters, all that, everybody's healthy, stay safe.
All right, y'all. Well, you heard it here. We hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Well, it's the weekend for us. It's Friday. So, definitely rest up, and wherever you may find yourself, reach out to MILPA. We're here for you, and love yourself. All right, y'all. Peace.